everybody, Tom Barnes, stories from the 78 involving all the states all across the United States. You know, inflation has hit all restaurants hard, and industry for that matter, and everything that goes with it. But disproportionately, Black-owned businesses have been hit in the restaurant sector, in the food sector. And I have my friend here, Lindsay, to kind of talk about the Southern Restaurants for Racial Justice program. How you doing, Lindsay?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having us here.
Absolutely. And if you could just get in the nuts and bolts of what this does, because you're nationwide, you're helping out Black-owned businesses, you know, to keep the culture alive of what they bring to any community. But not only that, across the country, but specifically here in Chicago, you have highlighted a few restaurants that some of this help will be going to.
Yeah, absolutely. So our program with Southern Restaurants for Racial Justice is absolutely a partnership. We have partnered with Southern Restaurants for Racial Justice is a coalition of independent restaurateurs that really wanted to elevate and support Black-owned businesses in the South. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we have expanded to across the country, and we did that through partnership with Heinz, which is one of our largest funders for this program, also with Square, who is the credit card process, or I don't know exactly if they're credit card processing or everything that Square does, which is tech-based,
sure.
And working with restaurants, and many other donors down to the Greater Chicago Trust supported this program last year. And honestly, for us, you know, we were a very small organization that focused on getting women and BIPOC owners into leadership roles. During COVID, we pivoted into direct aid feeding organizations. And partnering with restaurants across the country. We had several in Chicago just to feed restaurant workers. In a nutshell, the entire mission of the Lee Initiative is to create small and innovative programs that have high impact for any problem that we are facing in the restaurant industry. During COVID, obviously, that was feeding restaurant workers. As we started to come out of it, one of the things that we saw a lot was the disproportionate amount of aid that Black-owned restaurants were receiving through PPP and different avenues. Myself, as someone who loves restaurants and community, I did not want to come out of this to a landscape that was completely corporately owned restaurants. And
amen to that. We lose our soul as a country, I feel like, if that happens. Yeah, all due respect to those corporate institutions, those are great. And those once used to be a small independent thing and have grown. But if we don't have like our own people in our communities giving back to the community by serving up food, and we go in and pay and support them, that supports us, like we lose what made America so great, you know, in that space, you know?
Well, and I agree. And I think that if we look at it, you know, historically, if you look at even 25 years ago, American cuisine was laughable. You know, we were not
very true.
We were not at the forefront of cuisine, but as we see, you know, at least for me, like, yes, corporate restaurants can be important. When I think about the airport, it's airport Chili's all the way.
Right. There's a place for everybody at the table, not just one.
When I think about travel and when I go and stay in a neighborhood, the first thing that I look at is what restaurants exist within that neighborhood.
Absolutely.
What makes the neighborhood great. And it's the food and the culture that exists there. You know, it's not just fine dining. Like every single person has this place that they go. Like when it's your kid's birthday, you know, where do you go? Or
Merides.
You know, yeah. You know, if you are, there's so many different examples, but it's like, yeah, also if it's Wednesday and I don't want to cook dinner, how do I make that feel special and not like a defeat for me as a family member?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have my favorite pizza place, my favorite chef, and my favorite server. And so with this program, you know, we approached several different donors. Heinz actually came to us and said, you know, this is very important. We would like to preserve the culinary landscape that involves Black-owned businesses and restaurants, because it is a huge part of the narrative in American food. How do we do that? Well, for us as a nonprofit, there are many different avenues you can approach it from, but cash is a big one.
Cash is king.
Yeah. And that's what restaurateurs need right now to support not only their business, but their staff and their infrastructure. And so last year was our first year of this program, and Heinz seeded $1 million. A lot of it was matched by other corporations. They came in for a second year to do that. And they've been an amazing partner at looking at how else do we support, and that is by elevating the stories of the restaurants that we're supporting, which is where the Black Kitchen Initiative podcast came from. We only have 6 episodes so far. I'm sure most people know podcasts are very hard to pull off and expensive, but we're getting there. And it's a way to tell the stories.
And you highlighted a few recently here in Chicago. Do you have that information there for people to really pay attention? I know one of them is the Taste of Belize. The other one is the Caribbean Grill. That one's down in Champaign, but there's one in Skokie as well, which is just a suburb just north of Chicago. And I believe there's one on the south side as well. Trying to see
the
name.
South side, I think, is the Garifuna Flava.
Yep, that's it, right on like 63rd Street.
Yeah, Taste of Belize.
Oh, that's all one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Taste of Belize is part of I think it's part of their title. And honestly, we were able to sponsor 75 grants last year and 65 this year. I'm still catching up on who all of them are. I have some insane goal of visiting most of them. But
sounds like a great one to me. Get to sample food from all over the country and all over a city.
A lot of these are not fine dining restaurants. They're not someone you're going to see on a James Beard list, but they're people that are important to the neighborhoods that they exist in.
You know what?
Creating a culinary legacy.
Absolutely. I've had a lot of chefs come through my life for work I've done in previous jobs and whatnot. And you'd be surprised how many chefs that are James Beard award-winning chefs that ask exactly what you've been talking about. Like, where do you go to eat? I want to know where you go to eat because I want to taste the local flavor of this neighborhood. And sometimes, if not every time that you send somebody to a place that you love, they come back with a takeaway where they're like, that was incredible. I've never had, mofongo before, which is like a Puerto Rican dish, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've never had that before. And now these James Beard award-winning chefs that might have never been in that avenue are like, I'm going to incorporate that in my menu. And then the next time they come into the city to talk about something, they did. And it was because of that little neighborhood spot in Chicago. And we're talking earlier about how the United States was kind of laughable before as far as our dining, and being in Chicago, we've been spoiled. The James Beard Awards are in Chicago now. And it's become like a culinary center and of the Midwest for sure, if not the country, as far as the food that we turn out here. So it's a different language. People speak through their food, and I've learned that so much in the last few years. Of they really express themselves through their food, and it's a whole entire experience. And I think it's like the original immersive experience that people overlook, but it's so important.
Absolutely. And we have many partners in Chicago. Our initiative also had a reboot program, when we came out of COVID, that funded independent farms throughout, your region. Our biggest region was Chicago, providing food that we paid for from farmers at no cost to them to help people get their restaurants open again. But it was because when we talked to restaurateurs, what was most important to them is, oh my God, we use these sustainable products that are more expensive. We've been closed for months. How do we reopen but still be proud of what we serve?
Absolutely.
Eric Williams at Virtue was one of our first recipients of that program. This is likely how we met a lot of the recipients this year, because yes, Eric Williams won a James Beard Award. He is an incredible human and chef. The restaurants that we're sponsoring now are places that he eats and have shared.
Exactly. Exactly. It's reciprocal, really. People want good food, and you don't have to have there are plenty of chefs in the world that never went to culinary school, and they're some of the best in their entire field at what they do. And then some that do, it's just kind of like, it's just, that's the beauty of the culinary industry. From all walks of life, people can be very successful at it, and really highlights the culture of a neighborhood, a city, a country. So even more important to keep these alive and running, and to give back to the community. And that's what your organization does. And I think that's wonderful. And if people want to help with this or learn more about it, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, they can visit our website at theinitiative.org. They can link to the Black Kitchen Initiative through that website. They can support any of our initiatives, and we allow you to do that regionally. We see that a lot with Chicago. It's one of our most well-funded areas, and that's because of the Greater Chicago Trust, but also because everyone in Chicago has a restaurant memory, even if they don't live there anymore or they just moved there. That's part of your culture, and
it's all we do in the winter, is we figure out where we want to go for the rest of the year in the early winter months, and then go back in the summertime and enjoy the outdoor space if they have an outdoor space, or just go back, to revisit different. Chicago's got 77 and building the 78th neighborhood. There's plenty of places to check out. So this is great. Thank you for what you do. And, I'm glad to be able to help tell this story.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for telling it. And we look forward to meeting you at some point when we're up meeting the tons of restaurants that we have the privilege of supporting in your region.
Oh, I look forward to it. Let me know when you're here, and I'd be happy to do this on site at one of the restaurants that we're talking about now, or another one that pops in.
Awesome. Thank you so much.